Hello people, this is Salubrious, Irene Ratliff. The reason why I'm making a video today is because I want to have conversation in regards to our family structure. I have been meeting men who have an interest in our families, our women, and surprisingly, the conversation was in regards to their role, okay? And I wanted to say one of the first things is first when we're looking at our relationship, and that will be domestic violence. I think that when we look at our relationships from this moment forward, it is understanding domestic violence, not in the means for us to be violent, but to eradicate and correct what we see are the flaws that is associated with domestic violence. Okay? The next thing is that I think more men should be involved in those circumstances. Now, when we say domestic violence, we're looking at domestic violence in a sense where the conversation is the family unit. Women, children, men, okay? Another thing that I think that men should take on and look at and inquire with is the Department of Justice and the VAWA. The VAWA is Violence Against Women's Act. The reason why I'm suggesting that men look at it is because how it is associated with the structure of the woman anatomy. You understand where I'm coming from? Okay. So that right there is to imply us as a nation of people and what that means. Okay. So anyway, going back into the family structure, one of their bylaws was implying that the woman is essential. Like she's a quintessential force of energy on the earth. I was like, wow, wonderful. That's grand. I like it. Right? But that wording was not really, it was not calculated or added up to how I felt like I was being treated. Okay? So you can have the words there, but also understanding what it means to how you treat your female too. Okay? So one of the two main things that we see with our men is protection and providing. And so I was like, well, there are some things that are missing. Here's one thing, just saying, okay, well, I'm going to provide, and then that's it, that's all. Or that here it is, I'm going to give some mediocre protection. So he asked me, he said, well, what do you mean? Someone said, well, what do you mean when you say, well, hold on. I said, one of the main things that when we could look at our relationships with man and with woman is, do men actually provide and produce what the woman wants? So he was like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, on average, think about your mama. Your mama says she wants you to go to school. Your mama says she wants you to do good. She said, I want this, son or daughter. I want this. Why don't you do this? And she's offering you suggestions. You understand? Blessings. But what happens is that somewhere in there, we don't do what it is that we are supposed to do. So even the same thing with a man and a woman, and they're married. The wife say, well, honey, let's go buy a house. Or let's open this business. Or a man comes to his wife and says the same thing. Vice versa. It's when you're involved in a relationship that you can actually work on whatever that thing is so that you can attain it. So now we have to look at the union as that kind of structure, like a business. So when you're with someone, you're growing and you're providing and you're producing and you're developing and you're making that thing work. So when we have more of our men looking at their wives, their mothers, their significant other, their daughters. So he was like, I said, for real, when you think about it, a young girl is going to ask her daddy or father, I want this. I want that. And so his goal is to try to get it, right? He wants to satisfy daddy's little girl. Same thing if he's married. Well, the wife said, I want this, I want that. And so when we look at the larger picture, especially when we start looking at community, when a woman comes and she's like, hey, I want to do this, then that support should be there. Now, of course, don't get me misunderstood. When I say that under the media, I'm kind of concerned what that means. And so I'm going to make sure that I'm very clear on what we should consider as part of our community. Our community should be loving and caring, but don't get me misunderstood. There's a means when we start looking at protection and what protection means, okay? So when we look at cases where our men are doing each other a certain kind of way, that's a negative. When we see how we have police authority in our communities, and we've seen an influx of police brutality across the United States, then somewhere in there is a breakdown in what we consider protection. So hold on now. I'm not sitting there supporting anything that's going to be supporting violence. Didn't I just say that we have to understand what domestic violence is? Now you know what I mean when I say that. So I don't want us to get all kind of carried away what those thought processes are in terms of us actually mending and supporting our relationships, and what we need to consider what is forward in terms of us saying, okay, understanding the value of man, understanding the value of woman and our offsprings. It is important, okay? So I think that when I start writing this book, I'm going to be kind of inclusive in some of those things where the family unit is really it's the backbone of where we're going and growing. Okay, so we did see something there, and that something is that it went into something that was domesticated, and yet it just kind of went somewhere else. And so that's why I'm really reaching out and saying, when we start looking at the family unit, look at all the C-all. The C-all is the CIAL. Now we're looking at financial, physical, emotional, okay? That's the all aspect of it, okay? So now we have to look at those things, okay? So it goes into different areas. So go to your local domestic violence area where they actually support preventions and things of that nature. Gather their information, read it, and then don't look at just the family unit, but also look at your community. And then also backtrack on history and what that means, okay? So I just don't want it to look like, okay, it's just between a man and a woman or children. I want you to actually look at it as it being the structure of us building and actually healing our communities. Healing them somewhere else, but you know what I mean. Restoring and the restoration of our communities to greatness. So that means that we can avoid and learn how to avoid some of those things that have kind of, been involved in our communities and our relationships, and that we can kind of ratify what those things are. Okay? So when we start looking at the protection aspect, again, those things kind of go hand in hand. Providing and protection. Okay? And that's vice versa. Man and woman, woman and man. All right? Salubrious, people.